talking about people in the room. So we have Milena, who is from the Gehrt Institute and has been based in Lebanon and Beirut for the last 3 years, working with the Gehrt Institute. And then we have Angeliki from Elefsina, where it all started 3 years ago, and Biljana from the Balkans. So in a way, what we're going to be doing now is just continuing to build on what?
Because you said Biljana from the Balkans.
Yeah, exactly. You know, she's representing that region here today. And we're kind of building on the morning session, talking about what happens within those particular regions in terms of the art sector, the availability of funding, some of the challenges there. So as you develop your cross-border regional projects, you'll be informed by some of what is going to be spoken about today. And it's great to have the Goethe Institute here with us as well, because we also spoke this morning about UNIC and the role that they play in many of these countries, providing independent spaces, providing independent funding, without which much of the independent sector wouldn't really survive. So it's going to be good to be able to talk to her about some of the policy directions, maybe, some of the challenges that they may be facing. So we're going to keep you for last, if that's okay. And we're going to start with Angeliki.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, I will speak more about our context in Greece, more or less, that I'm more familiar with. It's true that in Greece, especially in the cultural field, what is happening is that, I don't know the exact numbers, but I can imagine that 85 to 90% of the cultural field are coming from the independent scene, and there is quite a big fragmentation. I mean that there are really small artistic groups that usually are made of 1 or 2 people mostly, that actually they are quite doing everything. And sometimes in terms of funding, it's quite difficult for them. The funding that's coming is usually centralized. It's everything, and especially the cultural field is very centralized in Athens. This is also because half of the Greek population is living in Athens. So it's creating this kind, and all the, let's say, big organization, big foundations are based there. So usually if an artist wants to get a funding, the options are limited. Usually there is not a lot of, let's say, funding coming from the state. And the resources to get a governmental funding are really limited. So usually the artists, what they're doing is to apply in different private foundation, that mostly are 2 or 3 maximum in Athens that you can apply. And maybe if you're lucky, also in the Athens Epidaurus festival, that it's one of the biggest festival in Greece. In general, there are not many options for funding for artistic groups, especially for the independent scene, and it's quite very hard to get. So when we got the title, and even from the bidding process, when we got the European Capital of Culture title, was actually also our response to this. How we can create a safe environment and a place for emerging artists to have time and funding in order to co-create with the community, and also to experiment as well. And Elefsina is also creating this kind of space, a safe space, because it's not far from the capital. So it's like 20 minutes away from Athens. And this gives the opportunity from the major part of the artists that are based in Athens to come in a long-term base and experiment a lot with the community, and also having more, we are investing also more to the emerging artists, because usually, especially the foundations or the festivals that are based in Athens, they are more investing on more renowned artists, especially in the local scene. So, yeah, let's say that in Elefsina, we first tried to experiment on that. Yeah, I don't know if we are succeeding, but we are at least trying. And also to advocate a lot on the regional cultural policy that, let's say, in Greece, that doesn't exist. Everything is centralized, there is no any strategy in any other city, and also municipalities are not having this kind of cultural strategy to invest in the cultural field. Yeah, usually they don't even have a cultural strategy. This is another issue, but yeah, let's put it on the table as well. So from this title, let's say the European Capital of Culture, we are trying to pilot different kind of funding model, because even if the state doesn't have kind of funding to give directly to the artist, municipalities and regions, on the other hand, they have. They have not a big funding, but at least they have resources. But on the other hand, what is happening is that this kind of funding is managed by people that usually are local politicians. They are not coming from the cultural field. So they don't hire, of course, cultural professionals as advisors or to give. So, for example, if you go to a Greek municipality, what is happening is that if you go to the technical, for example, services, you have an architect, you have an urban planner that is working in the department. If you go to a municipal cultural organization, you will not see cultural managers be there or artists working with the local staff. And what is usually happening is that the local politicians are just buying different kind of performances that are more, popular in the region, or I don't know, actors that maybe can see on the TV that are more popular. It's not that they having strategy. It's like a supermarket that you are buying some performances or some artistic works. So in Elefsina, what we are trying to do since the beginning is to create a cultural strategy together with the community, so in participatory way, and spend at least the funding that we have, invest this budget that we have more on emerging artists to create together with the community, and this is more or less what we are working on. Of course, we are trying to have the international cultural scene. Something is happening with the microphone. I will keep going. And we also trying to create a platform at the end of and now okay, I'm back again. To create this kind of platform at the end of each year that we are bringing at the same table for 3-4 days, local governments from different kind of Greek regional cities, to bring artists, cultural operators at the same table and share. And of course, bringing case studies from abroad to share with us the different kind of practices. This is more or less how we are working. Of course, we are trying to have international artists, so more or less we will have next year 130 international artists coming to Elefsina to share with us their work. Usually what we are trying to do is all these international partners to be in contact with local partners, so to have this kind of exchange. Also because it's useful for production-wise, but also it's a way to support the local cultural field. We had an international open call last year that was quite very, very hard for the local cultural field. So we decided to spread our funding as much as possible. We had 1,600 applications, but we tried to distribute the money as much as possible. And yeah, more or less, we have 130 international artists and 180, 90 local organizations working together with us. It's very challenging working in a municipal organization because my organization, it was established just in order to implement the project. It's a municipal SA, quite weird legal form, but this is it. We are trying to be more flexible. For many, many years, we struggled to find the right model in order for the organizations to bear with us and can implement with us. The challenges are so many, the bureaucracy is huge. But we are trying to somehow work together with our local partners on that and be patient with us. So, but this is also another challenge that the municipal organization and the public organization need to face in Greece, but I believe in other countries as well. And I will stop here. I don't know if I believe that in the continuation of this talk we can share more.
Speak a little bit if you have any corporate sector funding.
Any? Sorry.
Corporate companies, business, and you also spoke early on about the international community that is increasingly coming to invest in Athens, in the art world there. Speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, since 2015-16, we worked a lot on somehow putting Elefsina on the European, at least, cultural map, because it didn't exist at all. So what we try to do is to be members and co-organize different kind of events, different kind of meetings, capacity building programs for the local field, together with different European networks, organizations. So we tried somehow to be in different kind of cultural networks, but also cities networks. So, for example, Festival Academy, it's one of our long-term partners, and we have this kind of common journey since 2019. We began with a tailor-made capacity building program for Greek festival managers. Then we go for this atelier, so to open it up. Next year we will have the international atelier for young festival managers. So it's not something just to, the easiest way was to host the international atelier in our ECOC year. We didn't want that. We wanted to have a long-term collaboration, and this is something that we are trying to do with all organization and somehow build up over the years. In order to do that, you need, of course, more money and to invest a lot on personal, let's say, sorry? Yes, and just lot of drinks, food, and sharing that needs a lot of time, needs more time. But it's worth a lot. And then as we are representing the municipality, we tried also to be in different kind of cities networks as well. European cities network, but also international one. Not just to be members in networks, but to create this kind of relations, personal relations with people that are also working in different cities, put culture in the center of their approach, and be somehow have, let's say, the same craziness like us, that we still believe on culture and we still believe that the cities can change through culture, and also have this kind of approach of supporting the local independent scene and not just collaborating with big foundation or big organizations. So this is more or less our approach since the beginning.
Great, thank you very much. And as you say, we will have a time for questions and for some facilitated conversation as well. So moving on to Biljana from North Macedonia, also representing the Balkans.
Okay, hello, good afternoon. I hope you are not going to sleep. I know it's challenging, but anyhow, I'm Biljana from the Balkans. I'm Biljana from Southeastern Europe. I'm Biljana from Western Balkans also, North Macedonia, but also I'm Biljana from Yugoslavia. I was born then. So with the different regional identities, you were speaking more on a micro level of a region. So I will try to explain actually this complex, let's say, political labeling of this region to what I identify with. And mostly, as a person born in 70s, I identify with ex-Yugoslavia, because this was the region from where, I don't know, we all grown up together sharing the legacies now. And that is mostly based in a cultural field, from the music to the films to theater and etc. And I want to believe that actually we try to renew this kind of not only, how to say, emotional, but also really cultural connections nowadays. And it happened after the wars. So, okay, let me start with Balkan. Balkan is a very complex also notion. It's something that you can find it on Wikipedia, but it doesn't say that Balkan means honey and blood. This is what we know. But it says it's mountain, because generally it's kind of related to this mountain that goes, I don't know, from Bulgaria until Slovenia. But the complexity comes that Slovenians do not identify themselves as Balkan, because this bordering, let's say, mountain there, it's kind of dividing this small country into. So this, I'm not going to explain in details, but this is kind of explaining the complexity of what is, who is identifying and not with the Balkans. There was one book in 2000s by Maria Todorova. She is a Bulgarian living and working in scholar, working in US, and she wrote this book that actually was speaking about the Balkan being seen at the other. And this was related to the Said, the Orientalism, and how then afterwards it was related to Balkanism and to these people who are living there. So what we try to do, it's actually to subvert this kind of pejorative understanding of what Balkan is into something which is like positive thinking about this region, this culture, and these people. And then this Southeastern Europe and Western Balkans are political labeling, and especially it's about the perspective of Europe to kind of, European Union, sorry, to kind of think and work with a certain political region for European Union. So now, how to say, we are coming, I'm shrinking it, so Romania and Bulgaria and Greece are not in ex-Yugoslavia, but the rest of these Balkan countries as also Albania. But anyhow, we started working and collaborating after the wars together. And what that means, the ex-Yugoslavia started to connect, kind of, I don't know, it was a way natural, I would say, by meeting each other as the generations that in 90s were kind of separated, but started to reunite in 2000s. So what can I say is ex-Yugoslavia now has a different, how to say, system, and that's why I'm dividing it. And why is that? Because in this, after the Second World War, ex-Yugoslavia had the most liberated, let's say, system, but also it did these non-aligned movements. So it was not oriented towards just the West, but it also was oriented towards the East and African, etc. So it was very much open to very different diversities, which was not with the other countries in the Eastern Bloc, such as Bulgaria, Romania, even Poland, and etc., Central Europe. And anyhow, this legacy, what we had there, what we would like to understand it as, I don't know, a certain unity that we created, we try to convert it nowadays into the, I don't know, artistic projects and everything what we do. So let's say many different initiatives started bottom up in this region, and I can name few, and we meet the same challenges, I think, in this region, and those are mostly the challenges of corruption, funding, and how to sustain, actually, how to maintain who you are, I mean, as an organization, as a festivals, as an initiatives, and etc., etc. So what we did, it's like, there is one initiative, it's called Nomad Dance Academy. It started in 2005, and it started just by meeting together after the 90s and wars and turmoils. And still, you know, this, what we try to say, it's what is constant, it's always that we are into this transformative mode and in turbulences. In our region, the turbulence is constant. So political and, you know, all these political changes that we're not able to face it anymore because it's really constant. Anyhow, the Nomad Dance Academy, it's a regional network that deals with the development of the contemporary dance. And this is one of the initiatives that was very much advocating for different changes in the field, but not only in the field of contemporary dance, it was extended itself into advocating for certain changes, for example, related to infrastructure, related to, I don't know, funds, related to regional support in a sense of institutions and etc., because, for example, in any of these countries of ex-Yugoslavia, we don't have a dance center. There is the one dance center in Romania, dance institution. There is no in Bulgaria. There is now new institution, actually, which is, I don't know, multidisciplinary. So this is one of the initiatives. Another initiative that I would like to mention as a regional one is called Cooperativa. This is association, and it represents the independent cultural scene from this region. And what it's very specific in the system in which we work, we have the system of institutions, public institutions, very much inherited from the ex-Yugoslavia, and the other system, which is independent scene. And this independent scene represents this culture of resilience, I would say, and this is the culture in which all these, how to say, new or experimental art forms, but also advocacy initiatives are represented. So Cooperativa, it's an initiative from all these countries, and what is happening, it's a different Different type of forums are organized with different funders from the Europe, but also from the Europe, let's say, and I don't know, international funders to support the regional collaboration. What we did with this, and I would like to make the positive note out of this, we also have in the region the ministers' congresses from the ministers of culture in the region that meet from time to time, and they discuss what they can do with culture in this region. So far they didn't do much, but that's why we try to really advocate that it's possible to do a regional fund. So far we didn't do so much to bring some money, but we found certain supporters. And for, I don't know, 5 years, we had the opportunity to support each other and the initiatives in the region through this network platform, Cooperativa. And it's interesting name, Cooperativa is cooperation, and we believe in cooperation, but also in collectives and collaborative efforts. And another initiative out of that, with a huge advocacy, it was to initiate the European Fund for Western Balkans. So this was also another initiative which really made the difference. And how we did this, it was with many different advocacy events, I wouldn't use the lobbying, but very advocacy events on an individual level, but also on a level of associations and etc. And what we did as an effort is, because we couldn't, as an independent scene, meet the needs from the European Union for these matching funds, what we have, like 50% from European Union, 50% from us. We were also advocating to have a less, let's say, input from the local level. So we got this fund, which is 80% by European Union, 20 by our countries that we are investing in. So what else? I would like to say that we are very polarized societies. There are a lot of ethnicities living in our societies, but we are not polarized only on the ethnical level, but we are polarized on a political level. Very much, so much like we had in North Macedonia for 11 years a right-wing party ruling the country. So the division was between patriots and traitors. The traitors were those which were let's say, international, and the rest, of course, are patriots. And but this division, it's not existing only there, it's existing moreover in the region of ex-Yugoslavia, mostly because of this, undergoing and always coming nationalistic narratives that we cannot so easily overcome. And nationalistic narratives comes with isolation, I would say. And whatever more we are becoming isolated, then the people are more becoming rooted into something. I would even think that this fluidity that somehow Bauman talks about, that it's related with the capitalism, that kind of made the people to try to find something to be rooted to, especially, and maybe they're rooted to something, I don't know, to their national roots, or because they're isolated, I would say. When I say isolated, it's not because they cannot access something, but there is limited access to things, and all the limitations produce, kind of animosities maybe, or frustrations, or anything else that can be related to that. What I want to say about this independent cultural scene, I think it's very important thing for us, and this is where the power lays. And these are civil society organizations that connect to each other, where the contemporary thoughts and the critical thought is produced. And what I learned in these 11 years, okay, let me speak from my personal perspective, from 11 years, when I got 2,000 euros from the from the local government, not local, from the government of the country for support of our festival. We could have sustained only because of the regional collaboration. Only it was possible because we could have exchanged, but also support each other in a monetary basis. But exchange is not only economic, we understood it of sharing different things, such as like, I don't know, the competencies, the spaces, the possibilities among each other. So this is how we sustain. And the last thing for now, and in this independent cultural scene that I'm talking about, is that in COVID times, we tried to find out different mechanisms how to support each other. So I would just mention in Serbia this Solidary Fund, which was done. Then it was again in Croatia something that was also based on solidarity among all of us on the economy of exchanges, such as like supporting each other with, as I said, competencies, in order to sustain and to be present and not to kind of be under the radar, but really be there. Okay. What is important there is that I was speaking with someone sometimes about who is close to someone else. It's about the distance, and the distance is measured, let's say, by the infrastructure maybe. And this is because in our region before we had the very nice railway stations, roads, and etc. And now that it's unequal, so from Skopje to go to Pristina, it's really a challenge, you know, because the roads are totally crazy, and it's very close. It's like really close. But it's very easy to go, for example, I don't know, from Belgrade to Zagreb because it's a nice road. But now to go from Skopje to Ljubljana, which was very easy in 1 hour plane, it's not possible because there is no anymore this airway company is not existing. So nowadays we can travel among each other, I mean in between. Not really easy. So when we talk about the challenges of carbon footprint, it's really something that we need to discuss about, because for me it's easier to go to Zagreb by plane rather than a car or a train. Train do not exist. But if I speak about Thessaloniki and Athens, which I really find more and more closer to ex-Yugoslavia region in a sense of this, let's say, in the past decades past, kind of politically we relate to each other and on a value levels and understanding of the cultural environment. I collaborate with one woman from Thessaloniki, and she's supposed to come in Ohrid, which is like on the borders with Greece, like really close. And it's a really adventure to come because there is, so we were ordering one taxi, another, then I don't know what but it's very close. It's like, I don't know, 1 hour by car if you can drive, you know. So these are one of these challenges about the mobility within the region. There are supports about mobility which are coming from outside. In our countries, mobility is not understood in that level. It's really, there are no still schemes that support mobility. Everything is still related very much internationally. And how the international collaboration is understood, let's say, it's still on a very representative level. So that means, okay, I will take few films, take it there, okay, on a bilateral level, and just to represent what is happening. So it's no really kind of like, when I say like what constitutes our regional collaboration, I think that independent scene constitutes the regional collaboration, the mobility in the region, and everything that is related with that, because institutions do not collaborate between themselves, very incidentally, maybe you can say, but we don't see them, or there is this kind of past love between the one drama theater in Belgrade and in Skopje, so they exchange. So this is how it is. So people are getting more mobile, but also they go outside and they stay there. I don't consider them as diaspora. For us, diaspora is something else. But I understand that it's a brain drain in one way. But also I think there is a challenge to think about how we exchange with these people who are here and there.
Cool, thank you. So just to clarify, so when you talk about within the region trying to get back to what Yugoslavia kind of represented under Tito, you're talking about the contribution of the independent arts sector to that rather than politicians who remain divided.
Yeah, I talk about some system that was presenting values such as solidarity, such as collaboration, collective efforts. Then it was horizontality. We have these self-managed systems, and then we try to attribute to that self-organization. So not this verticality that it comes from the top to the bottom, but very much, try to kind of organize this sphere to come together from its needs, rather than having the authorities to say. No matter Yugoslavia was an authoritative system, but the system, how it worked in the culture and among the institutions and all these individuals, for example, then this was the basis. And of course, there were different bad things about, but we're talking about these values that we relate with. And these values, what we relate, do not produce disparities, but produce, let's say, these, communities that are working self-organized level and horizontally. And we advocate for those changes rather than, and being, socially very much aware. So to produce a system that can, with this awareness, support art and culture production.
When you talk about regional cooperation, are there regional advocacy groups for the independent sector? And how do they participate in the regional meetings of the ministers that you were speaking about as well? And how effective are they?
Okay, I said only about two. This is Nomad Dance, which is organized, Nomad Dance Academy and Cooperativa. Nomad Dance Academy is not an advocacy group, but includes advocacy events. We did one in Skopje, one in Sofia, in Belgrade, in Ljubljana, and we are going to do one in Zagreb next year. And this is like very much appointed. It's about the contemporary dance. But the other one, what I said about Cooperativa, it advocates on the regional level and also with the ministers of culture, but it didn't participate in these regional meetings of ministers so far, and it's going to have its meeting and a forum with the different representatives for international foundations, just in 2 weeks or something. So I think mostly this advocacy for the region is done from the Cooperativa, but it's for the independent cultural scene. And what it's also what I want to say, what it's important that in each of our countries, we did the associations of the independent cultural scene, which are locally very much working on the different initiatives. For example, I'm there talking also as an expert, but sometimes as a representative on the law of culture, then on this, for example, a system of supporting the freelance artists with the social security, for example, and the pension, And so we are kind of trying to be more present and be everywhere in order to change the environment and the material basic conditions, which are awful.
Great, thank you very much. We'll come back to you a bit later. Milena.
Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here actually because last year I was also one of the participants of the Festival Academy. And 6 years ago I came because of sidewalks of Sukak the first time to Lebanon. I'm originally from Berlin, Germany, and I worked the last 6 years since I started with Sukak as an intern with different independent festivals, but also in institutions, which is one in Berlin, Haus der Kultur in der Welt, and now since 1.5 years for Goethe here in Lebanon. I live here since 3 years. I came 1 month before the Thawra, before the revolution, so I pretty much experienced a lot the last 3 years. I'm a co-manager of Art Evolution. It's the project of Goethe. The other co-manager is sitting there, Marie-Mathilde. We are both working since this year for this project. It's the second edition. It's a project which is supporting emerging performing artists living in Lebanon. So this kind of project is it uses the structure of the Goethe Institute, but it's funded directly by the Foreign Ministry. So I'm not super much a representative of the Goethe. We're using the structure of it. We are both working as co-managers. We are both not originally from Lebanon, but living here since 3 years and 8 years. And the idea of the project emerged last year from the Foreign Ministry, which is a project, it's called Taziz Partnership, which is from Iraq until North Africa, and it's more trying to focus on the civil society. We are in this sense a bit lucky because we are the most artistic one. They try to find a way around the agenda and the political ideas of the Foreign Ministry, because of course with all funding and we have the direct funding coming from there are political agendas which needs to be followed. So what we try, and I think, it's our first year, and most probably we have next year another one. So we are right now in the process of understanding how the project worked, what can we do better. But I think we found nice ways to a bit play around. Rules needs to be broken, I think someone said in the morning, to play around the rules and the agenda and the ideas why the funding is coming. So what we try to do is, we're having the structure of the Goethe Institute, which is, I think, since a very long time. I didn't do my research since when. I think in Lebanon it's super long, actually. And it was much bigger. It was also in Tripoli. We had also an institute which closed. So of course the influence of the Goethe in the art scene, especially I think in a country like Lebanon, and I'm not representing Lebanon at all, I feel like someone is missing on the panel, is very strong. Like, of course, in the moment funding comes, and the German institute structure is very German. You need to know German for accounting, for the reporting, you need to know German. So the ideas which are coming from Germany into a country like Lebanon are very influential. What we tried, and I think which and to encourage as well, because we're co-managers, I'm studying, and Marie-Mathilde has an online gallery. We try to find our way to me as the German part doing reporting, but now with DeepL and everything translating, it's really possible also to cooperate together and break the structures. And this is something which is right now so much needed in Lebanon because so many people are leaving. Also, no foreigners are coming slowly, they're coming again, but which is actually a nice effect on the Goethe Institute, that the Goethe Institute cannot simply say we're just taking people who are speaking German, because this is how it was the whole time. Every person had to know German, and in a very reporting, writing German. So it's not like I hate A1 and now it's fine. So now we are actually forced at the Goethe Institute to find ways, and it's possible, obviously, like Google Translator is very good, to bring people in these positions and make it sustainable. Because what happens a lot with the Goethe Institute is that people are coming in for a year, they want to have a nice experience of 1 year working abroad, doing a project, and leaving immediately. So this, I feel like, is now, with all the conditions, is a bit changing, and it's a bit opening the structure of the Goethe Institute to be a bit more open to find ways. Still, it's heavy, and it's still like they know the funniest German words, which are very unnecessary to know. But I think this is something very important. What else we try is to rely on the communities and to the local communities which are existing here already. So we try to work very closely with Hamana Artist House, where we also had our residency, where you're going to go. It's amazingly beautiful. As well with Sukak, where we had our performances 2 weeks ago. With Hiba, was one of our emerging artists, and Kenny, who's sitting here. I feel like I have a good backup. So we try to work as much as we can with the local existing sustainable structures, which was also a bit hard to rely on the Goethe Institute structure, because so many things are changing, and through, of course, the explosion, everyone, also the Goethe Institute, lost the building and the servers, so there is literally no like archives, and as well because people really coming in and out. So you have also, with the director, comes 4 years in and out, and these changes are so complicated to archive, to have knowledge, which is really like through long years, through long cooperation, and giving towards each other. So what we tried is to focus on already existing structures, and to work with them closely together, and not being someone who thinks like, oh, I have a good idea and now I'm going to do it from my perspective. We wanted to, of course, ask within our frame of what we can do, what the scene needs. Our way of dealing with the foreign ministry, because they wanted that we're engaging with the civil society so badly, so we created impulse sessions. So we had open talks where we invited people, and we had keynotes. And next to it, we had our 8 emerging artists we could support for 5 months, where we started with the mentoring session, with the residency in Hamana Artist House, where we tried to, through so much the help of Hamana Artist House, to invite as many practitioners from the local scene to connect them and constantly support them to reconnect with them, to really create a network, as well with the alumni of last year. So this was one of the approaches, and then following the next 5 months, where we were able to support the artists through different mentoring sessions, where mentors came back from the time in the beginning, so constantly to try to always reactivate the community. Then we were able to go to Germany, which was so much fun. And I think and then we had the last performance, the last step of the project we had 2 weeks ago in Sukak, where we were able to show all the 8 performances. And we were also lucky, I think it was mentioned already in the morning, how many people in the audience are actually coming, which was for us also something super nice to see, because what we struggled as well with, and that's now we're heading to the next year, is when we opened the call, it was one of the conditions to be here for 5 months and to be able to really participate for 5 months and be constantly here, which is not so easy anymore in Lebanon, to find people who are saying, yes, for sure, I will be here for 5 months, because whenever there's an opportunity, of course, they take it. So it was also very much reflected in the way of how people applied and how many people applied. So you really see that there is slowly people. So we have another project, Phantasmeme. It's supported by GIZ. There's a similar feedback that there are not so many people applying anymore. So what we are trying now for next year is that we want to focus again on the people who are living in Lebanon, who want to stay in Lebanon for now, and also give them a reason to stay at least for the next 5 months. And we want to go more into production next year. So our focus is to say we want to reactivate the alumni of last year, the generation of this year, and as well open it for others. And there the approach is that we want to support production, but as well cooperations. So we don't want to only focus on one artist. We want to support and promote that there is like cooperations within the scene, because I think it's one of the issues always that people are like, there are some artists supported and the whole surrounding is most of the times they're friends and then they work for free. So to kind of encourage that there are cooperations with each other and trying to support this.
Great.
If there are any questions.
So, this is now open to the floor for comments, for any questions. Feel free to raise your hands and I shall refer you to the person that you would like to ask the question of. But maybe I can just start and ask a kind of like a policy-related one. So one of the, I'm based in Cape Town. I used to run something called Arterial Network, which was a Africa-wide network of creators, civil society basically. And we, one of the reasons why we organized ourselves as a civil society movement was because much of our experience within the African continent was that we were so dependent upon funding that came from abroad because our own governments weren't particularly supportive of the independent arts sector. And a lot of the funding came via the unique institutions, the EU national institutions of culture, French Institute, Gehrt, British Council and the like, and via UNESCO and a few other organizations too. And what we often found was that policy often changed for those institutions. So every 3 or 4 years there would be some kind of investigation that happened and that would change, or something would happen in Europe that would then shift the policy towards something else, and then the funding needs to be made available for that. Whereas those weren't the conditions necessarily in our countries or across the continent. So we often found that we had to then panel beat our projects to fit in with the new policy that came from elsewhere. So by having an organization that represented our interests, we were then able to work at source. So we could be represented at UNESCO where policies were going to be implemented or made around the 2005 convention, for example. So we were able to be there. We were invited by Gehrt, for example, to go when they were beginning to talk about culture and development and what this actually meant, because they got this money from that particular department at the time, but they didn't understand what it actually meant. So they invited a few of us to come and engage with them around it. So I suppose the question I wanted to ask of, and what I was trying to get at earlier in the Balkans region, are there membership-based civil society organizations, not the foundations that kind of work, but like membership-based organizations that are kind of engaging with the ministers of arts and culture around policy? Because something like the 2005 convention, which promotes the engagement of civil society, for example, the Balkans countries are all signatories to it. So they should be supporting civil society and engaging civil society in not just policy formulation, but the implementation as well. So I'm just wondering about the extent, because I also know from our experience within Africa is that although we all understand the need for this, artists generally don't want to be involved in policy and in advocacy and so on. So we're great at complaining about the lack of support that we have. We just don't necessarily want to do the work that is required to change policy and to do it's quite hard work in some ways. So I just wanted to know to what extent that might be the case in yours, or if things are shifting in any better direction.
Okay, we don't have membership organizations. It's a different structure, and these are the associations. And associations are funded by the civil society organizations, such as Lokomotiva and many others which are existing. So, for example, on the local level, we have one association which is called Yadro Core, and we founded 10 organizations of ours. We funded, and 2 main goals are: first is the advocacy for certain changes. One is the support system of the civil society in culture on local level, and second one is about the infrastructure. And let's say the third should be then, I don't know, the working conditions for the freelance workers and etc. So this is the one level on the local. Let's say, when I say local, I mean region, I mean a national. Like this is a case in North Macedonia, in Serbia, In Croatia, in Slovenia, it is a case, let's say, in Bosnia, but they are not very much, working constantly. Also has been founded such an association in Kosovo, and it's on the way to be founded, let's say, in Albania. And I think it's happening in Bulgaria, but I'm not sure. So this is like more or less ex-Yugoslavia and the countries around a region. This is not happening still in Greece, as I know, and it's not an initiative that it's there. But also they're very much different type of a system, how it is organized. And you were asking about being present on these, for example, regional meetings of the ministers of UNESCO and etc. We try to actually, through these associations, be hands-on on the local level, which means with our ministries of culture and with our, how to say, I don't know, and also through this cooperativa that I told you, it's an association of the associations, but also Lokomotiva is one of the founders. So it's an association of a civil society that is representing our needs. And another thing is about declarations and strategies in our countries. They're only on declarative level. Everything is written, is signed, is there. You have very meticulous kind of like, I don't know, strategists, experts from all around. They will be called, they will be paid with all these euros. They will come, and now they did a new strategy of the Ministry of Culture. And it's not implemented. The thing is that what is happening in the countries is they've learned that these declarative issues and stuff like that can be pointed out, can be signed, it's done politically, but then no one is evaluating if this policy is implemented or it's not. If those measures are implemented, how they're implemented, and what is the system of corruption and partocracy versus meritocracy, which they're saying that it's going to happen. Because you don't see the people which are professionals, more or less you have less and less, which are leading the institutions or these representative, I don't know, cultural events or etc. Those are mostly just the political figures. So therefore, whenever we are doing analysis, what is happening, we have to be very, very clear and very, kind of attentive to whom we are speaking, what papers we are seeing, what has been done out of these papers, and mostly not much.
That sounds very familiar. But there is also another way of looking at it, because say the 2005 Convention on the Promotion and Protection of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions. So countries are obliged to submit 4-yearly reports to UNESCO, and they're obliged to submit those reports with a combination of government and civil society making input into those reports. Our experience in South Africa was when we had to submit the first one, our government did not want to work with us as civil society on producing the report. So we said, fine, we'll produce our own report, which we did. And that was, we actually submitted our report on time, whereas our government didn't. And because, the governments are really the state parties that belong to UNESCO, right? So their word really counts more. But UNESCO nevertheless published our report on their website. So I'm just giving this as an example about how, as civil society, we need to be organized in order to advance and defend our interests, because our experience is that no one else will, no one else does. It's not in the interest of government to do so, particularly for the independent sector that is potentially challenging and provocative and so on. You were going to answer the question about organizations in Greece?
Yeah, we, as you mentioned, we don't have, like in Greece as well, like membership fee, organization or association. What happened is that during COVID and during pandemia, let's say that somehow the independent scene was self-protected and created a kind of network in order to advocate for their rights. But the support cultural workers movement that we had in Greece, but it was not something official or with membership fee, or somehow this kind of an official network being created just to save ourselves during this period, and it's not something that, you know, it was sustainable. But yeah, I mean, the political instability also, it's a matter that affects us all, especially in our regions, and especially when we are talking about policies. When you have every year to speak with another Ministry of Culture, I mean, for the ECOC project that began like as a procedure in end of 2014, let's say 2015, let's say that until now, 4 or 5 ministers of culture have changed. Don't say about 2 mayors or different kind of BODs, different kind of. I mean, this is challenge. It's a huge challenge when you are trying to do something in a long-term period, and this is something that all the, let's say, Balkan European capitals of culture are facing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you think you're making progress with one minister, then that minister changes, you're starting all over
It's a
again.
constant capacity building.
Exactly. So there's a question, I think it might be something that you could address, Milena, regarding the decision of Germany to help 18-year-olds with an amount of money, 200 euros to spend on live art, theatre, dance, exhibitions and so on, and not in digital cultural sector. Do you think it has to be also for other ages after the pandemic? Is it something you're aware of and might be able to answer? Or anyone else know about it? Right. Yep.
Yeah, so that's probably, if I understand Iris correctly, is coming from a news report. So Germany is now just starting a system that every 18-year-old gets a £200 voucher that they can spend on a cultural product. So this can be a ticket to a theatre, to the cinema, to literature, can we buy a book, etc. And the aim is to fulfill 2 aims. One is to get young people to use culture and engage with it, and the other one is to help the cultural industries that suffered in the pandemic to get new audiences come through the door. Other countries have also similar approaches. It doesn't include at the moment Spotify and some of those digital things, and you can't buy things on Amazon. You can get a book in your bookshop from it, but you can't buy a book on Amazon. So that's what the question is about, why there's no digital, and should it not be for everyone? So we all get 200 euros, you know, to spend on culture in order to repopulate our theaters, etc. And unlike what we've seen here in Beirut the last few days, the experience in Europe, I can speak for the UK generally, but I've spoken to a lot of German and Belgian and Dutch and American colleagues, is that live venues do struggle with audiences coming back. Post-pandemic, audiences are coming back, but not as quickly and not as often as we'd like to see. So one of the biggest festivals, Edinburgh Festival this year, was 25% down of what they normally are. Some theatres in England are working at 40-50% capacity, where they normally operate at 80-90% capacity. So one of the drivers behind this initiative is to support venues and cultural content providers, as well as giving young people who haven't been able to go to the theatre for the last 2 years an incentive to try out new venues.
Thank you very much for that
I'd like the 200.
clarification. Yeah, it is actually an initiative that a whole bunch of countries have. Too few. They call it a cultural basket, and they make it available to families. And it's about stimulating demand for the arts. There's almost, in some senses, an oversupply. A lot of producers are supported to create work, and then to go and find a market. And I think this is coming at it from the other way around. It's to make money available for people to become a market. I'm aware that people are a little bit quiet, and it's kind of going towards 5 o'clock and so on. But there are some interesting questions that have been raised, and the things that we can speak about. Something I did want to raise with all three of you. We've spoken about the impact, to some extent, of COVID on the sector, of inflation in this particular place, of the explosion and the like. Something that we haven't mentioned at all is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I was wondering just how that has impacted on the arts sector in your particular spaces, not necessarily directly in terms of, people are not coming to the theatre for fear of a bomb falling on their heads, but how has it impacted on money being made available, on how, certain changes have had to be made in terms of accommodating Ukrainians and so on. So has it been a thing that's affected you at all, and how might it affect any kind of cross-border cooperation that we are talking about here? Would you like to start, Angeliki?
Yeah, of course, all the production costs were somehow not doubled, but let's say that were raised a lot. So with all our local partners, with that we had more or less finished our negotiations with this kind of extreme change. We had to somehow renegotiate or see if it's still possible to implement the project with together or not. I mean, because the production costs were quite been raised, and of course
Where in particular were the production costs being raised? What parts of it?
I mean, all the material, also because the major part of our projects it's community-based, being implemented in public space. So a lot of kind of materials that were raised, energy costs and also some materials that previously were more accessible. Now it's much difficult to bring them. So we are also somehow isolated as well. It's not that Greece is very easily accessible, as you mentioned before. So this is one part, and also the mobility costs, of course. Because when you have so many international artists that are coming, or you're trying to push on mobility grants to local artists to go to other countries, this is quite difficult, especially for Athens, that we don't have this kind of accessibility. And in order to any person to come in Greece, or any artist wants to leave from Greece to go somewhere else, needs to take a flight. You don't have an alternative. Maybe a boat, but you have to do so many days. So all the mobility, all the accommodation, the fly, everything was doubled. The hosting expenses were somehow they were doubled. Also because, for example, the accommodation, the hotels, let's say, in the area, they were closed for 2 years. So when they opened up, the expenses were double for them as well. So this kind of expense goes to the client, let's say. So somehow all the productions were quite higher, and this means that or you decrease the fees of the artist that we don't want to, or you have to put more energy and find alternatives, find more sponsors. Yeah.
I mean, Lebanon, I don't know the exact influence. Like, there are so many factors coming together. So for me, I felt it on the bread costs, to be honest. So it's for me very hard. Where we felt it was when we applied for next year. So for next year with the foreign ministry, they cut a lot of money. A lot of money is taken away exactly from this sector. And so a lot of other projects we're hopefully we are lucky that we can continue next year. But for example, in Egypt, a lot was cut down, and we feel it's a mix, and the focus is different. So now it's much more on environment. So we try to, I mean, it's always playing around and using the right wordings to get the money. But this is where we felt it.
Oh, this is one more challenge that probably we will see the effects more next year, I would say. The bread in the country came from, let's say, €1 to €2, and maybe €2.50, but not the wages. And so that means that the material conditions of work has to be downsized because there is no actually, I don't know, the capital through what you can work with, you know. So this is depicting what is the situation, which means that if someone could have buy with €500 something, now it's half of the price, half of the value. So that means that really affected everyday life. Then it's like the art labor, and which was already underestimated. So the artists already were working in a very bad conditions. And I'm mostly talking about the freelance artists. And also there is no, how to say, sensibility on the side of the politician to understand the differences, because in the institutions they have the certain amount of security. Actually, there is a constant security which comes as a wages, as a social, as a pension security for the artists working within the institutions, which is not the case in the independent sector. So that means that already precarious workers become even more precarious. So I would say that came to the exploitations of the resources, exploitations of the labor, exploitations of the artists, and even those resources which were accessible, such as some funds which were oriented towards Balkans, which is always under the turmoil, now are going in Ukraine, you know. So it's even the, I don't know, foundations such as, I don't know, Gehrt or here and there, what we have, they're mostly interested in supporting Ukrainian artists coming in a residency in Macedonia that doesn't have a space to invite them, you know. But they would really try to fund them so we can get them there to support them. And we would really like, and we are going to do that, but only because one of our artists is already working with an Ukrainian artist. So therefore, I think we have to solidarize, but we have to really think how not to damage the conditions of the artists already working in the country. So it's affecting everywhere. Another thing, just last but not probably least, is that probably we've heard that they will close the institutions maybe, or they will do the half working time in order to save the electricity. So that will not help us, because anyhow, in order to get our project money, we have to finish with the activities. It's a project money. It's not an infrastructural money that we get. So the only one in danger, again, is the independent sector and the civil society sector, who cannot have a spaces where to do their activities. And on the top of that, the Minister of Culture, who is a political figure, she has no idea about culture, but she has probably someone to advise her. And I don't know how, but she tried to get us together 2 months ago to tell us that we should get back some of the money that we got. And we got like 10,000 euros for our yearly program already, you know. And we were saying, like, are you aware what are you asking for? Because this is the life of many people, and the artists you're talking about. In this kind of a crisis, you should have think about the mechanisms, how you can add things by you advocating and finding money as you're finding money, you know, to pavement, to do the pavements, to build the bridges and etc. This is, you know, the human beings. And then we said, okay, I don't know, you're already paying the institutions and they're already having their productions. Maybe you can cut the production of the institution instead of 10 productions, they can have 2 or 3 or 5. And she said, oh, really, this is a possibility. Okay, let's talk. And I mean, at the end, it came, she didn't cut them, but this is the position of not knowing the sector, not knowing how the capacities work out, and etc. So that is another damaging situation and a factor in that kind of crisis.
Milena, I was going to ask, just now you were saying that a lot of the money from the Foreign Affairs Department comes with a political agenda, and you need to kind of work around it in a way. You spoke about sustainability as kind of being quite a key issue for foreign government funding. And in Germany, sustainability is understood very much in terms of the ecological dimension of sustainability. What are the other political agendas associated with money that people here need to be aware of in terms of shaping projects that might, because I think ultimately we all are aware that money generally comes with some kind of condition attached to it, and it's about whether we are comfortable with aligning our project with that funding or not. So I suppose if people are informed about these are the kinds of strictures attached to this funding, they can make decisions about whether to apply or not. So
I know it actually just like we have a head of the institute, and she is luckily in this position to teach us what kind of wordings we need to use there. What I think what helped, and I like that's a good point, because I think a lot of times people are wanting to apply, and they're not understanding what kind of money comes behind it. So I think what always helps a lot, and in our case it's for example like this, that we have our website Art Evolution, and then you see where the funding comes from, and this is always linked to it. So in the moment you go on Tazi's partnership, you see immediately it's from the Foreign Ministry, and that they want a political civil engagement with the society. So I think, and it was really like, I mean, there were a lot of conditions to choose the artist for the program, but especially like words like this are so much helping us if they're used in their applications, because then we have to submit the applications and the whole reporting, all this goes in. To use this kind of wordings, which are in our case with Tazi's partnership, are very clear on the website. There are different agendas, but unfortunately I don't know them.
or you're not at liberty.
I don't want
to. Yeah. So I just wanted to know as well, on the move, are they active in Greece and in the Balkans? Yeah.
On the move, yeah. We also have Elefsina is working in a different capacity building program for performing arts practitioners. But in general, they are also connected with Teatroscope, right? They are also connected with Teatroscope and the mobility grants that they have.
But I know about iPontus. There is this EU scheme now, and I think it's available even larger. iPontus, yeah.
It changed the name.
iPortuns.
Yeah.
I believe. Yes, iPortuns. And it's a mobility fund, and even people can apply for residencies to go on a longer term, to exchange. Longer terms than 7 days, which is like not on this, 1-2 days, or for co-productions, mobility and stuff like that.
I believe it changed the name. It's like Culture Across Europe, something like that. Yeah.
Maybe now they're launching a different name.
Okay, but so great. So there's more mobility money out there, possibly. But I think also the important thing about OTM on the move is that they do quite a bit of research into funding that's available for mobility. And I know that they produce these kind of funding manuals for different regions. I'm not sure if there's one for the Balkans, but maybe that can be something that they get commissioned to do, so that people are aware of all of the possibilities of funding. I know they have one for the Arab world, they have one for Africa as well. So folks, it's 5 to 5, and then there are mentor kind of sessions, one-on-ones after this, and it's been a long day already, and then there's still a few more things that will happen this evening. So I think we're going to end it here. Anas has very kindly offered to do some stretching. I'm not sure if people would like to do some stretching now. Then Anas, it is your moment to lead the floor. But maybe on behalf of all of you, a thank you to the panel for their contributions. Really appreciate it.